Hi, I'm Marin. I used my credit to help my sister buy her dream house. 6 months later, I was sleeping on her futon in her guest room that didn't have a door. One morning, she left something taped to the fridge, a legal notice with my name on it. It wasn't a prank, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was an official 3-day notice to vacate. The paper was crisp, printed in black ink with all the legal phrasing perfectly laid out. It used words like cohabitant and unauthorized tenant. My name sat there in bold, like I was a squatter, not the person who'd made the down payment possible. For a long second I stood in front of that refrigerator like I'd forgotten what I came for. The sound of my niece giggling down the hallway, blissfully unaware, was the only thing that kept me grounded. Danica didn't even say anything when she left for work that morning. No warning. No, "Hey, we need to talk." Just a banana in her hand and a muttered, "Can you remember to wash the bottles if she goes through more than 4? I sat down at the kitchen island and stared at the notice. My coffee had gone cold. I didn't drink it. I just turned the mug in slow, tired circles. 6 months ago, Danica was crying in that same kitchen, though it belonged to someone else then. She had just finalized her divorce and was trying to get her daughter into a better preschool district. Her credit wasn't good enough for the mortgage. Mine was. The math was easy. She had a child and I had room. She had needs and I had resources. She said, "This is temporary, just until I get back on my feet." I believed her. I believed every word. But the house wasn't in both our names, only the loan. The deed was hers. That had been a technicality, or so I was told. "It's easier for one name on the title," Danica had said, "but I'll never forget what you've done." She forgot faster than I could have imagined. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It comes from holding in too much for too long. That morning, I felt it settle in my chest like smoke trapped in a sealed room. By noon, I'd folded the notice into thirds and slid it into a notebook, half hoping it would disappear. Instead, Danica came home early, holding her phone up with one hand, balancing a large gift bag with the other. "Livestream walkthrough," she chirped. "Brand collab. Try not to be in the background, okay?" I blinked. "You gave me a notice to leave." Her tone didn't even shift. "Yeah, I did. But that's in 3 days. Can we just not ruin this vibe? This is a huge opportunity." She walked away before I could answer. I could still hear her voice through the hallway as she practiced lines. "Welcome to our home, where mom life meets modern elegance." I leaned back against the counter and wondered how long I'd let myself believe I belonged here. How long had I confused being useful with being wanted? That night I sat on the back porch. It was late. The string lights Danica had hung for her outdoor aesthetic buzzed faintly above me. I scrolled back through texts from our mom, from last year. One stood out. "Mom, you're such a good sister for helping Danica. She needs support right now. We all do." I had replied, "Of course, she's family." She was, and somehow I was not. The phone buzzed again. A text from Danica. "Danica, BTW, can you not mention anything to Mom yet? I'll explain when I get a chance." She always explained later, but later never came. I looked up at the lights. They'd started flickering. Maybe it was just faulty wiring. Or maybe, just maybe, it was a sign that things I thought were stable had always been built on unreliable current. Maybe it was time I stopped fixing the house and started fixing my exit. Ever trusted someone so deeply you didn't notice the floor shifting beneath you? The scent of roasted rosemary chicken filled the house like a promise no one would keep. It was Danica's idea to host Sunday dinner for the family. "Keep things normal," she said. She wanted to film part of it for a short Sunday Moments vlog, something about showing her followers how she balanced family and motherhood. I was asked to help with prep. Not invited, not thanked, just expected. By the time everyone arrived, I'd already set the table, cleaned the living room, and pre-cut the bread. I'd even picked up a bottle of wine Mom liked, though no one noticed that part. I wasn't trying to be the center of anything. I just thought, maybe if I stayed useful, I wouldn't feel invisible. Danica breezed in with her usual flair, hair curled, outfit effortless. She held her daughter on one hip while gesturing toward the foyer with the other, giving her followers a cheerful tour on Instagram Live. "You made this all happen," Mom beamed, kissing Danica's cheek. "Your house looks like something out of a magazine." I was still wearing leggings and a t-shirt with olive oil on it. "Marin helped," Danica said over her shoulder. "She's been staying here for a bit." Her voice dipped as if staying was a charity she extended. "For a bit," Dad repeated, taking off his coat. "You mean she's still here?" I stiffened but kept my eyes on the salad. The room was warm and not in a comforting way. Danica cut in smoothly, just until she gets back on her feet. I didn't look up. "I'm not off my feet," I said. Silence rolled across the table. Then a too loud laugh from Uncle Ray. "Well, at least you've got a place to crash, huh? That's what sisters are for." Sisters, right. Dinner proceeded like a scripted play. Danica narrated her parenting hacks. Mom bragged about Danica's recent brand deal with a diaper company. Dad asked if Danica had considered writing a book on resilience as a single mom. I passed the potatoes, refilled drinks, and felt the walls tilt a little more with every smile that didn't include me. I caught Mom glancing at my empty ring finger. "When are you going to start thinking seriously about the future?" she asked softly. "Not everything is about work, Marin," Danica chimed in, "or staying on people's couches forever." There it was, sharp, surgical, wrapped in a smile. I stood up to clear the plates before I said something regrettable. But even that, rising from my seat, was met with a joke from Cousin Blake. "See, she's great at this domestic stuff. Maybe you missed your calling." I dropped a spoon into the sink a little harder than necessary. Danica followed me into the kitchen, her voice low but smug. "Try not to take things personally, okay? They just worry about you." "Worry," I repeated. "Or forget." She didn't answer. She took another bite of pie from the counter and left. I sat at the edge of the sink and pulled out my phone, opened the banking app I hadn't checked in a while, maybe because part of me already knew. And there it was. The mortgage was still being paid, mostly by me automatically. But a new line of credit had been opened against the home equity. Home equity line of credit, $48,500 drawn. I stared at the number like it might rearrange itself. She'd leveraged the house, our house, and didn't say a word. I walked into the hallway. Mom was holding my niece and cooing at her. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice even, "did you know Danica took out an equity line?" Mom blinked. "She did? Well, I'm sure it's for something important. Kids are expensive, Marin." "It's my credit too." She gave me a look I knew too well. "Honey, you're not the one raising a child." And that was it. End of conversation. End of relevance. Later that night, after everyone left and the dishwasher hummed like nothing had happened, Danica sat across from me on the couch. She had a face mask on and a wine glass in hand. "You're quiet." "You borrowed against the house," I said flatly. She didn't flinch. "For furniture, branding matters, the deals I'm getting, this house needs to reflect that. My name is on the loan, but not on the title." I stared at her. "You promised—" She cut me off. "I said a lot of things. You could have said no. Don't act like a victim now." I didn't answer. I went back to the guest room. The futon creaked when I sat down. A minute later, she knocked. "I'm not a bad person," she said through the door. "You just don't know what pressure feels like. Everything I do for my daughter, for her future. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I said nothing. She added softly, "You were always the smart one, Marin. Don't ruin your own peace trying to win something that was never a competition." I waited until I heard her steps retreat down the hall. Then I opened my laptop, not to write an email, but to search. What to do when your cosigner drains home equity? The screen glowed in the dark, and for the first time I didn't feel guilt. I felt clarity. I wasn't part of their family circle. I was just the ring they used to sign the papers. Ever sat at a table where everyone smiled, just not at you? I used to believe that love, real love, was measured by what you were willing to give without keeping score. Turns out, only the ones doing the giving think that way. It started with a photo, a blurry, washed-out print tucked inside a notebook I hadn't opened in years. I found it while looking for an old insurance file in my storage bin, tucked under the futon. The photo showed me at 13, hair frizzy from humidity, holding a trophy at the district science fair. Beside me stood Danica, flawless as ever in a ballet costume, beaming like she owned the spotlight. What no one could see was that I'd walked a mile that day after Mom forgot to pick me up. She'd been at Danica's recital. That had been the first time I learned how to be proud alone. It wasn't the last. I sat on the floor and flipped through more old notes, timelines, even a few crumpled cards with "Thanks, you're a lifesaver," written in Danica's handwriting. They were short, hurried, transactional. I couldn't remember the last time she said thank you and actually meant it. Growing up, I wasn't the favorite. I was the fallback. Danica got the shiny things. The new shoes, the piano lessons, the spot in the yearbook. I got library cards and hand-me-down books, but I didn't resent her then. I figured she needed more. That's what Mom always said. You're more independent, Marin. You understand better. But maybe that wasn't understanding. Maybe it was silence, and I had just mistaken one for the other. I remembered my first year of college. I'd worked 3 jobs to cover what my scholarship didn't. Danica had dropped out the same year because school wasn't for her, but she'd stayed at home, rent-free, and later borrowed $3,000 from me to start something creative. That something never happened. When I asked about repayment, she laughed. You've always been the responsible one. You'll figure it out. And I did, because I had to, because no one else ever worried whether Marin was okay. I stood up and went to the bathroom mirror. I looked like I hadn't slept properly in weeks, maybe months. But there was something harder in my face now, something new. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even pain. It was resolve. The next day, Danica knocked on my door. Not the way people knock when they need something, but the way they knock when they want you to clean up a mess they made. "Can you pick up Ava from daycare?" she asked, tapping on her phone screen. "I have a podcast interview and I don't want to drag her around." I looked at her, really looked. "You said this living arrangement was temporary. You said we'd talk." Danica sighed like I was exhausting. "You live here for free, Marin." I tilted my head. "No, I pay the mortgage." "Technically, but it's my house." My voice was calm, too calm. "And yet, somehow, you're the one building a brand of it." She narrowed her eyes. "Is this about the home equity line again?" "This is about you treating me like an assistant with a credit score." Danica's mouth opened, then closed. "I don't have time for this," she muttered, grabbing her keys. She left. I picked up Ava anyway. At the daycare, one of the workers smiled at me. "Ava always lights up when she sees you. She calls you her calm mama." Something cracked open inside me, not in a painful way, just a quiet, devastating way. Calm mama. I wasn't a mother. I wasn't even acknowledged as a legal tenant in my own financial contract. And yet here I was, changing diapers, picking up from daycare, cooking dinners, making sure the lights stayed on. When I got back to the house, Danica was recording a reel in the living room, doing a voiceover about gentle parenting and boundary setting. I stood in the hallway, watching her smile at the camera lens like she knew what any of those words meant. I didn't interrupt. I went to the guest room instead and opened my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keys. I could hear Ava in the next room giggling, then Danica laughing too, just loud enough to remind me which version of the story the world was being sold. I opened my email, typed the subject line, "Inquiry Joint Mortgage Ownership and HELOC Fraud." I didn't send it, not yet, but I saved the draft. That night, while Ava slept and Danica scrolled TikTok with a glass of rosé, I stepped outside. The patio lights buzzed above me like they always did. The cold bit into my skin, but I didn't mind it. I pulled out my phone and started rereading old texts. Not just with Danica, with Mom, with my brother. They all had a theme. Requests, requests, requests. Money, time, help. None of them asked how I was doing. None of them noticed when I stopped texting first. Then I found a message from years ago, one I hadn't seen in forever, from my father before he passed. "Dad, you're the glue, Marin, that's why no one sees you. People only notice what breaks." I exhaled so slowly it hurt. That was the night I realized I'd never been part of the family in the way they claimed. I was a function, a bridge, a lifeline, not a person. And that was going to change. Ever been the one holding everything together until you realized no one would catch you if you let go? The morning started with flowers, not for me, for Danica, from a baby formula brand she was trying to land a contract with. A clean white bouquet, wrapped in silk ribbon, delivered to the door with a handwritten note, "To a mother who inspires." Danica opened it with a squeal and immediately reached for her phone. "I have to show this. It's content gold," she said, arranging the bouquet next to her breakfast smoothie she hadn't actually made. "Can you hold Ava while I set up the tripod?" I held her daughter while she rehearsed lines for a reel. "Hey mamas, this is what it looks like to start your day with balance and joy." I stayed quiet, like I had 100 times before, not because I wanted to, but because I hadn't yet decided what breaking silence would cost me. Later that afternoon, the house turned into a scene. Danica was hosting a soft launch baby shower / branding day. Just a few friends, some influencers she barely knew, and her manager, who had the personality of a buzzsaw and the patience of a lit fuse. "You'll help, right?" Danica had asked the day before. "You're so good at staying behind the scenes." Behind the scenes. That was always my place. By 2 p.m., the house smelled like cupcakes and synthetic candles. The ring light was on, every corner fluffed and staged. My job was to keep Ava calm, refill mocktails, and very specifically not be seen. I wasn't bitter, not yet. I was past bitterness. What I felt was something colder, heavier. I caught a glimpse of myself in the hallway mirror, hair tied back, holding a toddler, smoothing out decorations. I didn't look like a guest. I looked like staff, and I wasn't even being paid. Then I heard it. Danica, live streaming to her 38,000 followers. Welcome to our space, my sanctuary, my dream home that I built with hard work and faith. This was all me, mamas. Every inch of it. My hands stopped moving. She walked past the kitchen where I had meal prepped the entire week. She smiled into the camera, sweeping her hand across the newly renovated living room. I did all this on my own, she said, because when you believe in yourself, nothing can stop you. I backed into the hallway, heart thudding, not from rage, but from clarity. This was not just her playing pretend for the camera. This was erasure, intentional, complete. I turned to leave the room when I heard a notification ping. Oops, Danica laughed on camera. Hang on. Something popped up on my screen, tech stuff. But she'd already shared her screen with the live stream. Everyone watching could see the browser tabs lined along the top. One stood out, frozen in high resolution for a full 5 seconds. Partition of joint property legal draft vertical bar Marin E. Danica fumbled. Her smile cracked. She ended the stream too late. The buzz started before she even put her phone down. Messages flooded in. Comments from viewers who'd caught the tab. Screen capped it, zoomed in. Questions, speculation, gossip. I walked into the kitchen as she was pacing. What the hell did you do? She hissed. I didn't do anything, I said calmly. You're the one who shared your screen. You're trying to take my house? I looked at her. Really looked. My name's on the mortgage. You took out a $48,500 loan behind my back. You hosted a live stream claiming it was yours alone. Tell me, Danica, what exactly am I taking? Her eyes flared not with guilt but panic. You can't do this. You know how hard I've worked to build this platform. I have brands watching me. You used me as your co-signer. You used my credit. You used my silence. You don't get to be surprised I stopped offering all three. She stepped forward. Think about Ava. I already had. I stepped back. Don't drag your daughter into this. You don't get to weaponize motherhood just to stay above consequences. For once, she didn't have a comeback. Later that night, Mom called. Of course she did. You need to fix this, she said before even saying hello. Danica is distraught. She's distraught because people found out the truth. You should have handled this privately. What happened to being the mature one? I closed my eyes. She gave me an eviction notice, Mom. Silence. I didn't know that, she said quietly. You didn't ask. I just want us to be a family. No, I said, you want me to keep being quiet so you can pretend we still are. That night I didn't sleep. I pulled up the documents again, revised the partition letter, and forwarded it to my attorney. This time I hit send. I didn't warn her. I didn't explain. I had done that all my life. Ever watched someone tell your story, but erase your name from it? The first message came at 6:42 a.m. A voice note, thick with a forced calmness that never meant anything good. Hey, Marin, it's me. I think we should talk. Face to face, just us. I didn't reply. By 9:15, Danica was standing at the kitchen island, arms folded, no makeup, hair pinned up like she was trying to look softer, as if vulnerability could be curated like content. She reached for a mug that wasn't hers, one I'd brought with me from my last apartment, ceramic, chipped on the lip. It said, "Loyalty is quiet," ironic, or maybe prophetic. I don't want to fight, she started. You're not fighting, I said. You're reacting. Her mouth tightened. This house is the only stable thing I've had in years. You know what I went through with my divorce. I did what I had to do. You didn't do what you had to do. You did what was easiest. For you. Danica held up both hands. Look, I know I should have been upfront about the equity line and the eviction thing. I panicked. I felt like you were judging me all the time, like I was drowning in your shadow. That caught me off guard. My shadow? You're perfect, Marin. You always have been. The responsible one, the smart one. Everyone expected me to be more like you, and I couldn't. So I made my own lane. But then you showed up again, and suddenly you were in my house with my daughter, fixing everything. I felt erased. I stared at her, stunned by the audacity of it all. You felt erased in the house you used my credit to buy? Danica looked down. I was scared. I softened for a moment. I had been scared too, for years, of losing family, of being the outsider, of realizing no one would show up unless I was useful. "I'm not here to take your daughters home," I said. "I'm here to reclaim my part of what I built, what I signed for, what I paid into, and that part, I'm not giving it away anymore." She blinked, almost like she didn't recognize me. Or maybe she finally did. "I can't afford to buy you out," she said. "Not now." "I know." "Then what are you going to do?" "I've already done it," I said. "The papers are in motion. You have 90 days to find a solution. After that, the house goes up for sale, unless you refinance and pay me my share." Danica let out a breath. "So that's it." "No," I said, "that's fairness for the first time." She left the room in silence. That afternoon, Mom called again. This time her voice wasn't sharp, it was resigned. "I just got off the phone with Danica." "I'm sure you did." "She said you're forcing her and Ava out." I didn't answer. "She said you never really cared about family." There it was, the line, the familiar gut-punching deflection. I had heard it so many times in different forms. When I chose college over staying home to help, when I said no to co-signing for a cousin's car, when I left Christmas early that one year because no one had saved me a seat. "What she means," I said slowly, "is that I stop letting her define what family looks like." Mom sighed. "I just wish you two could get along." "We never didn't," I said. "She just never liked the version of me that stopped bending." That night, Danica tried one more time. She came to my door, not knocking but just standing there. "I could offer you installments," she said. "Small ones, monthly, quiet. We don't have to make this messy." I looked at her. "I'm not hiding anymore. I'm not accepting less but polite so you can keep your image intact. You wanted me out, now I'm out, and I'm taking what's mine." Her lips parted but no sound came out. I shut the door. It wasn't cruel, it was necessary. The next morning she packed Ava's lunch in silence. I poured my coffee, printed a copy of the partition notice, and slid it into a white envelope, left it by her keys. Before I left for a walk, I turned back and said one thing. "I won't stay where I'm only welcome when convenient." She didn't stop me, didn't call after me, and for once I didn't look back. What happens when keeping the peace means erasing yourself? The house looked different in silence. No ring light, no toys scattered on the floor. No perfume of content curation in the air, just sunlight slicing through half-closed blinds, dust catching in it like forgotten glitter. It was the first time in months the place felt like a house again, not a set. Danica was in the nursery, softly humming to Ava while folding a onesie that probably still had a gift tag on it. I stood by the doorway for a few seconds longer than I needed to. I didn't interrupt. She'd stopped speaking to me directly after the envelope. The official 90-day countdown began 2 weeks ago, and she hadn't asked for an extension. She hadn't asked for anything. We lived like polite ghosts, drifting, nodding, not colliding, and I had never breathed easier. I had already signed the paperwork with the real estate attorney. My portion would be bought out through a partial refinance by a local investor, someone Danica had previously tried to land as a mom brand partner, though she'd never guess I was the one who'd initiated the conversation. She wouldn't need to move out entirely. She could stay, pay rent, or eventually reclaim it fully. But the illusion that it was hers alone, that was over. So was my part in it. I zipped up the last suitcase in the guest room. It barely clicked closed, not because I had much to pack, but because I had so little left I wanted to keep. I left the futon folded, the sheets clean, the corner of the room neat, like no one had slept there wondering why love came with so many clauses. Downstairs, Mom was waiting. She had asked to come over to say goodbye, though I wasn't sure if it was to me or to the version of me she'd kept on a shelf for years. "You really won't reconsider?" she asked as we sat with tea that neither of us touched. "I've reconsidered too many times," I said. She reached for my hand. "You know your sister's trying. She's just never been as strong as you." I withdrew gently. "She was never expected to be. That's the difference." "I hate that this is how it's ending," Mom said. "It's not ending," I said. "It's just no longer happening on terms I didn't agree to." She didn't know how to answer that, so she said what she always said when she didn't want to confront truth. "I hope you find peace, Marin." I smiled, but not sadly. I already have. Outside, my rideshare pulled up. 2 suitcases in the trunk, a manila folder on my lap. Inside, my signed release from the mortgage, my new rental lease, and the title to a modest condo 3 towns over, a place I found on my own, negotiated on my own, and would decorate however I wanted, without anyone asking if it would photograph well. As the car pulled away from the house, I didn't look back. At a red light, my phone buzzed. A text from Danica. She asked for you at bedtime. I read it twice, then replied, "Tell her I said goodbye for now, not forever." She didn't answer. I leaned back in my seat. The air smelled like rain about to start. Clean, unwritten. Sometimes closure doesn't come with applause. It comes with stillness, with waking up and not having to brace yourself for being made small again, with walking away not to prove a point, but because you're done performing, because love, real love, doesn't ask you to disappear to be accepted. I looked out the window, one last thought floating quietly into place. Maybe the peace I'd been waiting for was never in their approval, but in my absence from their expectations. What's the first thing you'd reclaim if you stopped being the quiet one? Sometimes reclaiming your life doesn't mean slamming doors. It means choosing not to knock where you're no longer welcomed. I used to think staying quiet was strength, but I've learned that setting boundaries isn't the end of love, it's the beginning of self-respect. If my story reminded you of something in your life, I'd love to know where you're watching from or what part of it hit home for you. And if it didn't resonate, tell me why. Let's keep this space honest. If this video touched you, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Healing is never loud, but it's always real.